Hey class, Professor York here. I wanted to follow up from our class exercise on the purchase driver scorecard and just walk you through this prototype so that you'll have better understanding so you can finish up your case questions. Okay, and I had the opportunity to review with a few of the teams already, so some of you may find this very familiar and you can pass on this video. Others may find this very useful. So when you set up a model, what you need to think about is input variables and output variables. And you will see this in other classes as well, such as accounting, finance. You may see this in operations management as well. So what you want to do is set this section up on top and clearly define in yellow your input variables. And what I did was I broke up the input variables into those that are purchase driver scorecard specific, okay, over here, and because these are going to be very key to making the model calculations. The other thing, as you remember in the previous video, is we included awareness, which is the percentage of the potential audience, and then you start seeing that's a conversion from the potential audience that's there, or in some cases you may call it the sum, and then conversion rates from the level above. So familiarity conversion is a conversion from awareness. Consideration conversion is that from familiarity, and so on and so forth. The second piece in the input area deals with the income statement. And I know you'll get a little bit more in accounting as well as in finance. But what I've done here is laid out some key parameters on the income statement, which would involve for revenue and gross profit. So what we have is units per customer, because we're going to calculate the number of customers ultimately that are coming in, both as first purchase, but also repeat purchase. So we're talking about per each of those purchases. Then we have price per unit, and then we have discount per unit. So I've thrown that in because many times there may be discounts that are thrown in against the main price. And this is a good way of starting to include discounts into your revenue model. And basically what I would have here are what we call the key drivers of revenue, something that I had just reviewed within the business plan lecture last week when we talked about objectives, or those SMART objectives. And then last but not least is the cost per unit, which will go into calculating the cost of goods sold. The revenue versus, or subtracting out the cost of goods sold, will give you your gross profit. Then we come to this last section, which is dealing with the income statement, okay, which deals with the net profit portion, which is once you have your gross profit, then SG&A, which is really sales, marketing, and administration costs that are there. We're adding them rather than percentages or per unit, we're setting as fixed costs, that investments that are there. Marketing program in this case, sales program, general administration. So in one of the questions we ask about increasing marketing program costs would be in this cell, or if you have other costs that are there, this is that relate to marketing and sales, it would be in here. Remember to put them as negative numbers because they'll roll into your model when you add them up. So you're summing positives and negatives. So that gives you the foundational pieces for the model. And we'll come into the output portion, which is the first key output section here is that of the purchase driver scorecard. And basically for the purchase driver scorecard, what we have are the different elements of the funnel. Okay? Market potential, then you have awareness, familiar, consideration, purchase. And so you go, well, how do I calculate this? So, and how do we link it to the inputs? So if you look here, we open up this cell here for awareness. What you see is forecasted customers, which is a market potential. Okay, but it links back to the awareness cell where you could input awareness. Then familiarity ties back. Remember, we're going percentage of the previous step. See, it ties to awareness, which goes to consideration, familiar conversion here, familiarity conversion. Then we go to consideration, and again it ties back to the previous cell of familiarity and to the consideration conversion rate, all the way down to purchase. Then we take the same approach down to satisfaction, and then conversion to repeat customers. The total customers are basically the purchasing customers on the first purchase and the repeat customers that are there. Okay? And then you look at funnel efficiency. So I asked a question about funnel efficiency. And funnel efficiency is basically the ratio of those who have ended the funnel and are purchasers over the total market potential, or the sum, the total obtainable market. And this is a key metric because when you look at funnel metrics, you are looking at how efficient, because it starts to tell you how efficient you are in being able to convert from the overall market. So 22% is not bad. It could be better. And there may be strategies as a marketing manager to be able to enhance that. Okay? And that usually tells you not that maybe what you should be doing is looking at what you can do in terms of some of the different funnel steps. Okay, so how do we look at that as well? Well, one of the things you could do is looking at direct percentage of each step in potential, which realistically is just the ratio of the total in that forecasted number to the overall market potential. Okay, and so on and so forth, in familiar and consideration. So that sort of gives you a sense of in each stage where some things are. And then if you look, we pulled percentage from prior step, we pulled back from model. So what's interesting as a marketing manager, you start looking at where is the drop off. And you could actually graph these data here, and you'll see that we have a drop off in awareness. So maybe an awareness program can be very something that you as a marketing manager could be able to drive to improve funnel efficiency. Okay, as well as familiarity conversion, which may tie into support programs that could be on your website, or it could be through your social media, or through outbound program like perhaps it would be a MailChimp program if somebody have done a sign up. Okay, but what we do see is consideration. Once we get them into consideration, we see the rates of conversion are pretty good. And what's really impressive is getting only satisfaction as well as repeat customers. So this way you start thinking strategically in terms of how can I manipulate certain parts of the funnel to improve its efficiency. All right, so hopefully you're following here. I'll come back to this in just a second after I finish the income statement, because what I am discussing in this model is the model that specifically has data in your cases that have conversion, not necessarily having what we call percentage from each step, but there's a very easy way of converting that. Okay, last section is income statement. Okay, and the income statement, we have those input variables, so we're going to drag down the customers from the total customers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that number by the units per customer. And then we get to calculating gross sales. Now what I could have done is given the price and the discount and put them out. All I've done is I've built an equation that goes to units times price times the net price modification, net. So if you have a 5% discount, it would be 1 minus 5%, which would give you 0.95. And that would be the net price that you would use to multiply versus units. And then last but not least is your cost of goods, which again is the number of units times the cost per unit. When you sum those two pieces up, it gets you your gross profit. But we're not done yet. Then we have to add in our marketing, sales, and general administration costs, which are negative. They'll give you your net profit. okay, which some cases could be your earnings before interest and taxes, okay, depending on if you're adding back depreciation or not. So anyway, that gives you a sense of how, if you notice, how this model works. And we tend to like to have the models in from a straight up and down line. It just flows more logically and easier. And so let's go to a scenario. I think one of the scenarios that we had was building a 2x2 table. So imagine you were a marketing manager and you were asked to vary two key drivers, one being awareness and two being price. So what we would do first and foremost in creating that 2x2 table is we would identify what our economic outcome is, which is going to be your net profit. But as we look at that, we also have to consider the variables that we're going to vary. In this case, awareness. So what we have done in the column is we've varied awareness by 10% intervals from 10 to 100. Remember, we were at about 55% in this case example. On price, we took it and varied it from $1 to $10. So you can vary, up and down 50, basically several points above or below what you have in your model. In this case, it was $5. So we have these scenarios laid out. And what you can do is you can identify, okay, as we have our economic outcome. You link it by selecting this, which is H38, which will give you this 885 here. All right? And then what you will end up doing is to activate the table, you are going to select the table, and then you are going to go to your data tab, and you're going to do what you're doing, which is a what if analysis. You'll go to data table, and then you have data table input, row input or column input. Okay? And your row input basically here is going to be price. So then you go back into your input section relative to price per unit, not the discounted price, over here. And then the column input is going to be awareness. You add those factors in, and then you click and you let the table calculate. And this is really cool because now you get these numbers. And these numbers are different scenarios based on what you've put forth as these variables, 2x2 variables to look at what if. So say we were at $5 and we wanted to increase awareness. We got awareness to 70%. All of a sudden we're at $1.26 million, which is significantly more than the $885,000. Now somebody may argue, okay, that's great, but it's going to cost me more money. So what you can do is then you can update your marketing program costs, and I think I added that into the case as well, is that you could put, maybe it's $750, whatever it is from your baseline, a new cost. And then what I didn't put in the case, which you could add in, is if I say I've increased my marketing program cost and the investment is going to increase awareness here, then what you'll see is that this net profit changes, and you'll also see changes in your 2x2 table. All right, one last item here, okay? And that is for those people who got the data that said percentage from each center of potential. All right, you're probably scratching your head and saying, how do I get myself from conversion rate? Well, that's pretty straightforward. Now that you have the forecasted customers, it's pretty straightforward to be able to basically for each step go and divide the awareness converted from market potential, and then you can go down the line and pull for the other steps. Okay, we can put this into percentages. percentage right there. And then we can adjust numbers, but basically you have that. You can then, based on the specific parameter, then you can add it over here in terms of the conversion rate. So 50% conversion rate, 92%, 88%, 86%, 90%. So there's where you get that. So this is the way that you can easily be able to utilize whether you have conversion rates or you have average numbers. Makes for a great tool for doing metrics, doing funnel metrics, and at the end of the day is tying it back to the income statement and then using it as a decision tool to look at if I'm going to vary different parameters to improve funnel efficiency in terms of improving awareness or another piece of the funnel. You can be able to do that and you can add in, I'm going to improve awareness by X%. That's going to cost me $100,000. And now what you can do is look at not only the impact in terms of the forecasted number of customers based on funnel conversions that are there on each of the steps, but all the way down to gross and net profit. Okay, I hope this helps you out. If any questions, feel free to email. See you on Monday. Drop me a copy of your work so I can give you some credit. And I will see you on Monday, and we will have a great discussion around branding, and we'll see if we can have some time to talk about the value-based pricing model.